Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to this week's episode of the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. Joining me for this one, fresh from her time in Miami, Natalie Pinkham, alongside our very own Karun Chandhok, and a British winner from this weekend in Miami. Drum roll please, it's Abbi Pulling, who won not once, but twice this weekend. So Abbi, look, huge congratulations. I guess as race weekends go, that is pretty perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, oh my God, it was, as well, what a place to do it. The vibes were immaculate, and I think I scored 57 out of a possible 58 points over the whole weekend, so it was almost perfect.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, fine, so not quite perfect. 1 point
Not
off
quite.
perfect. We'll give you that, Natalie, how was your weekend? Rubbing shoulders with the stars in Miami? I see you've got a wonderful jersey, Miami Dolphins jersey on.
Just living the dream. Abbi, I want to start by saying congratulations. So proud of you. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say to see you up there on the top step was phenomenal. And actually, Matt and I were discussing earlier what odds we would have got for two Brits to be winning in Miami. Fantastic job. It can't have been easy. There was a lot of pressure. And a huge amount of intensity, I would say, in Miami, not just for those racing. There was just so much going. It's kind of hectic, wasn't it? Brilliant, but bonkers.
Yeah, I think coming into Miami, I just raised my game a bit more, especially after Jeddah. Obviously the controversy or whatever you want to call it happened there. I didn't win on track, and I definitely wanting to prove a point, showing that I can do it on track. And like you say, it's not just intense on track with the heat and everything. It was insane off track. Obviously it's just been announced that Netflix are going to be following us, so it's everywhere you turn there's a camera in your face and a microphone to your mouth, so it's pretty intense on that basis as well, to be honest. But I think it's just great, putting us on a platform like that, showing the behind the scenes of the racing. And it's not just about jumping in and out of the car. There's so much more off track that goes on.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see that documentary. That's due out in 2025, isn't it? In production at the moment, part of Reese Witherspoon's production arm. Karun, how was your weekend? I'm going to guess it was as unglamorous as mine compared with these guys.
Yeah, it was lovely. I was at home. I had a barbecue, watched the Grand Prix, watched the sprint, watched F1 Academy, had the kids running wild. All things that, I rarely get to do these days. So yeah, it was really nice, actually.
Yeah, not on the bike for this one.
No, although I did manage to sneak in a couple of Zwift rides on the old turbo train. I watched the sprint from my Zwift on my Zwift bike, actually, which is good.
Oh, very good. Nowhere better to do it. Let's start by doing our little What I've Learned segment. Abbi, I didn't give you a heads up on this, so I'll come to you in a sec. We'll get Natalie and Karun to have a go, and I'm sure you'll work it out. But basically, it's a chance to say what we've learned this weekend in Formula One, or indeed F1 Academy, or any of the series that have been going on. Nat, I'll start with you. What have you learned?
Well, Matt, I have learned that Miami is now my new favourite Grand Prix.
Oh, yeah.
I know, it's a big call. I get asked this all the time. Which Grand Prix should I go to if I could go to just one? And I'm always torn between the British Grand Prix because, I'm loyal and passionate, and I grew up near Silverstone. Monaco is just crazy but wonderful and full of history and glamour and prestige. But Miami, wow, it was something else. And I think they've ironed out the teething problems of the first year. There was a lot of complaints that all sorts of things kind of went wrong in the first year as they're working it all out. And it was a slick operation. It felt like everything had been covered. And yes, there were a lot of celebrities there, but in the main, bar maybe one or two notable exceptions, they seem to really know their stuff about Formula One. And so they were genuinely excited, new, passionate fans, which is what the sport's all about. It really feels that we've not only cracked America now, but we're running with it. And it's really exciting.
Yeah, shout out to Camila Cabello, who I thought she was there all weekend, wasn't she? But her interview with Martin on the grid walk, I thought was fantastic. She really seemed to fall for Formula One hard this weekend.
100%. And I was I had the honour of interviewing her on the Wednesday night as a exciting launch for F1 Academy, and she was just, Abbi, she was getting behind the girls as well as all the drivers in Formula One. And yeah, she's exactly the kind of celeb I'm talking about, buzzing from being there and genuinely grateful to be there as well. It wasn't a given. Do you know what I mean?
I never actually spoke to Camilla. She was one of the ones that we kind of crossed paths, but never had time to speak. But there was even, Zadine was there, and he come over to the paddock and come spoke to me, and even Charlotte Tilbury on the pit wall waving the checkered flag. She was absolutely loving it, and the fabulous as she says, she was loving it, and yeah, it was great to see all the faces there, and they were genuinely really interested as well, like Natalie said.
Yeah, so we should just mention that Zinedine Zidane that you're talking about, as you just had.
But,
what did you call him, Zinedine? Just casually, like, me and Zed.
I took the opportunity and ran with it for him to sign my pole position award.
Nice.
His signature all on there. It's going to look really cool on the mantelpiece for sure.
Oh my God, yeah, definitely. Karun, what did you learn?
As usual, I'm going to say I learned a few things, Matt, because I was watching from afar. I learned that Lando Norris is probably the most popular driver amongst his peers. Everyone seemed delighted that he'd won, and it was so nice to see. I learned that the RB form guide is extremely confusing. I don't know how they can go from Daniel being fourth, I think, on the Saturday to nowhere on Sunday, and then Yuki going the other way, having a hopeless sprint quali, and then an amazing race. So that was very confusing. I learned that Donald Trump is a Natalie Pinkham fan. Did you see the picture? Smirking away. My God, he looked delighted to see Pinks in the pit lane. And I learned that F1 Academy is inspirational, not just for girls, but for boys as well, because my son was an absolute fan and he was very hooked, and apparently went to school and this morning and said to his classmate at drop-off that, did you know that girls also have a racing championship? So there you go. I think there's an impact everywhere.
Yeah. That is brilliant, Karun. That just makes my heart sing, as it must do yours, Abbi.
As much as Trump's smirk.
No comment.
Abbi, I'm sure you've got the hang of this. What have you learned this weekend?
I learned that two F1 cars can go side by side around turn 14 to 16. I thought even in an F1 Academy car it'd be tough, but Pierre and Esteban got their elbows out with each other and showed that they can do it. And yeah, it was a very fun weekend. Lots of racing, lots of moves. Yeah, I learned, like Natalie said, there's such a big buzz around Miami. It seemed, I was there in the first year, and it just seemed so much bigger and better this year. And the buzz around F1 Academy, we weren't being overshadowed by the F1. We had our own moment there, and it was just amazing for all us girls there, and the fans, younger men and boys and girls wanting to kind of get into racing and just inspiring, the next generation was so heartwarming for me, for sure.
Really, really cool. Has there been any fallout from the Alpine camp, Abbi, with those guys going through that? It was pretty tight, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of, but it was at one point I was gritting my teeth and closing my eyes. It was pretty. I don't know how they got around turn 16, because it is a very, very tight corner, but they made it work. They were very respectful of each other, which is what you like to see.
Well, look, for what it's worth, I've learned that Kevin Magnussen is very, very close to missing a race because he now sits on 10 penalty points and only needs 2 more to get a race ban, and he's got 18 races this season to go. And Karun, maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, no driver has ever in the history since penalty points have been invented been banned, right? So he could be the first driver to ever be banned?
I mean, Grosjean got a ban, didn't he, for Spa when he climbed over the top of everybody else for a dangerous move. And I don't know if that was I can't remember if there was a culmination of penalty points or not, is what I can't remember. But it was definitely for a dangerous move.
Yeah, it wasn't for the build-up of points in the way that you're describing, Matt.
Yeah.
So, interesting. Plays the team game and might end up losing a seat to Ollie Behrman eventually, and it might be Ollie that steps in.
Yeah, but I think he was a little bit over the limit, wasn't it? I think what he did in Jeddah was fine, because he was staying within the track and he was basically backing people up in a clever tactical way. But I thought some of the stuff with Lewis, running when you're running off the track and taking the other car with you, I think then that's just not particularly sporting, is it? I think you got to play the game, but I think you've also got to at some point be fair to the other competitors.
Were you surprised, Nat, when he openly said in the interview with you, all the penalties were valid.
Well, I was surprised because I'm used to drivers coming in and saying, "Not my fault, mate,"
Yeah.
And actually for him to hold his hands up, I'm torn on this because I'm a big K-Mag fan. I think he's a great guy. And actually to hear him be so candid and honest was really quite refreshing. And then to hear Lewis's response almost surprised me more as well. He went, fair play. I really respect his honesty. Didn't have a problem with it. Now, if Lewis Hamilton doesn't have a problem with it, then I certainly don't. I don't make the rules. I quite enjoyed seeing them tough it out. But, Karun's the racer here. And if he says that it was a step too far, then I bow to his greater knowledge. But I quite enjoyed it, if I'm honest.
Oh, it was super entertaining. I agree.
Abbi, did you have a view on it?
To be honest, I think that's one of the parts of the race that I missed as I was running out the paddock. So,
Yeah.
but by the sounds of it, the respect that they had for each other in the sense of putting their hands up. I think it's always best if you're in the wrong to admit to it, and hopefully it will pay you back in the future. I like to think, but no, it sounds like I agree with Natalie. With if Lewis says there's nothing wrong with it, then got to agree with him.
All right, let's talk about the big moment of the weekend then, really, wasn't it? It was Lando Norris getting his first win in Formula One at the 110th time of asking. He's now a Grand Prix winner. Nat, you sort of were right in there in the pen, chatting to Lando. Try and sum up the atmosphere and the feeling amongst all the other drivers, amongst the paddock in general at Lando getting that win.
Well, it felt like quite an apt ending to what was just a really buzzy kind of vibey weekend. I mean, there was just so much energy and colour and music and glorious chaos. And for him to emerge victorious just felt right. I was surprised, but pleasantly so, at the way he was able to pull away from Max after the safety car. I didn't think that would happen. I didn't think he would get that sort of 5-second lead that he did. But I remember, I was thinking back to sitting down with him at age 13 at MTC, and he was so shy and kind of nervous being on camera for the very first time, kept looking down at the floor, and I just wanted to try to reassure him that, we weren't there to trip him up. We just wanted to get a sense of who this new kid on the block was. And honestly, to see him come through and take his first win made me really quite emotional, as I think a lot of Brits will feel the same. We've watched him grow in front of our eyes, and he deserves it. And he's still modest. He's still humble. He's still very much a family guy. And it was wonderful. And, that was evidenced by the fact that every single driver to a man went over and hugged him and congratulated him. And that carried on in the pen and well into the night. And Lewis was urging him to change his flight.
Yeah.
Party hard that night. And, rightly so. It was great. Really great.
Yeah, there's going to be an inquest, I'm sure, into the partying when we next speak to the drivers in Imola, because it sounded pretty good. Karun, what did you make of Lando's win? It was, look, I guess he got lucky with the safety car, didn't he? But as soon as he was in front of Max, apart from that first safety car restart, didn't look in doubt, did it?
I thought it was a super drive. I had his team radio on for the entire race. And I think back even 2 years ago, Matt, often the communication between them, his engineer, Will Joseph, would say to him, Lando, what do you think about this, that? And he'd go, I don't know. You decide. Or maybe, not sure. Or there'd be a bit of flapping about something. But for me, there was a key point early in the race when Perez pitted quite early on. And they said to Lando, we think our race is not with Perez, it's with Sainz. We're going to look forward. And he just went, yep, don't worry, opportunities will come. He sounded really quite buoyant, which, I mean, Nat, we often say, isn't he? He's quite downbeat normally. Yeah. That's his sort of tone. But actually, all through the race, listening to the chat between him and Will, it was in a very sort of upbeat, buoyant, looking forward mode rather than looking in a defensive mode, which was nice to hear. And it told me a lot about his mental state. Would he have overtaken Max if not for that safety car? Probably not. Would he have been second? I think so, and he admitted so in the press conference. But to your point, when he had that opportunity, he absolutely grabbed it with both hands. I was a bit worried with the restart because it didn't look like he got the jump. And in fact, Max had the toe into turn one, but he absolutely nailed the first sector and broke away from the slipstream. So, very, very strong drive. I mean, I think, there's a counter argument to say, if the pit stops had happened and he'd cycled through, and then we had a safety car, he could have attacked Max, because I genuinely think he was faster. So yeah, you're right in saying he was lucky to get the track position. Absolutely, even he knows that. But I think if the safety car didn't come, let's say 10 laps later, and he was in that train behind Max, I think he could have got right behind him and attacked him for the win. So this was, I know Daniel obviously won in Monza, but it was a race where Lewis and Max had taken themselves out of it. This was a win for McLaren for the first time since 2012, where both Red Bulls, both Ferraris, both Mercedes, both Astons, all of their rivals were in it, and they came out on top. It was a proper win for McLaren.
Abbi, you were leading your races this weekend. Take me inside the cockpit. What's it like as a driver when you've got the track out in front of you? You're trying not to think, I guess, about the podium, what you're going to say to everyone afterwards. How do you stay in the moment? And how impressed were you with what Lando did yesterday?
Yeah, to be honest, for me, it was off the line. As long as I got out in front on the start, it was just about doing quali lap after quali lap. Obviously, in Formula One, you've got to manage the tyres quite a significant amount more. But I thought it was super impressive what Lando did. Soaking up the pressure of Max behind. Obviously it's a Red Bull. It's been so dominant this season. So to kind of have in his head, you know what, I'm going to take this opportunity. I've got the advantage through the pit stop on the safety car, and he just seemed so determined, and I just I have to admire that a lot. I think he created one of the most exciting races we've had in a while in Formula One. So it's you just got to applaud him, and like you say, everyone was so happy for him.
I think that's a really good point, Abbi, isn't it? Because we haven't had a great Miami Grand Prix until this year. I think it's been a fun event, as Nats was saying, and all the people of the good and the great of the world in the sport and entertainment and all that have come out. But the actual on-track stuff was a bit dull until this year. And I thought we had a cracking race, good battles all the way down, even without that safety car. As you were saying before, the Alpine drivers. It was great. I mean, was it a fun track to drive for you? Did you enjoy driving there?
Yeah, I for sure enjoy. I mean, if you're quick around the track and you've got a good balanced car, you're going to love it. So I really enjoyed driving the track. I'm gutted that I couldn't get involved too much in the action because of being at the front, because it's a track with such long straights. Like you say, it provides really great racing action, and the obviously F1 is the DRS, but for us we don't have anything. We've just got to go on pure momentum, pure slipstream. So it's one of the tracks on the calendar this year for us that is one that's really made for overtaking on. So it's like you say, provided great racing in all of the championships there this weekend, and especially the Formula One.
Nat, what about the reaction from the other drivers? I know we've mentioned it a little bit, but Lando winning was surely one of the most popular winners in recent times in Formula One, right?
Yeah, and it just seemed so natural and so authentic. It wasn't forced. They were all coming up and slapping him on the back. And even those that perhaps had tougher races, someone like Daniel, it can't have been an easy Sunday for him, but he was genuinely full of praise and, genuinely happy for him. It was great to see. And I mentioned that to Max, actually, when I talked to him at the end. And I said, I know that you won't be happy with P2, but just a word on your mate winning it. And he said, if I can't win, I'd love Lando too. And I said, I don't know, there just seems such a sense of camaraderie, you're brothers in arms. And he said, absolutely, we are all mates. We do get on really well. And it's kind of strange to see, isn't it, Karun, when you look back, the history of the sport, there's so many bitter rivalries. I don't think you get that sense. Another case in point, we've discussed it already, is Kevin and Lewis. Lewis actually backing Kevin up there, despite what happened on track. And you just sense that up and down the grid, there's genuine friendships, and they do have each other's backs. Which, people will probably say, I want them to be more ruthless. But actually, when the visor goes down, the racing is hardcore and it's intense and it's compelling. But away from that, they are able to genuinely be happy for each other. And that's
I can't wait to see what happens if they're in a championship fight.
Yeah.
Because that's the real test, isn't it? That's when it all gets a bit serious and the pressure cooker. starts to boil over.
See if Lando gets the same reaction if he starts beating Max every week.
Yeah.
We'll just let him have this one.
Yeah. It leads me on to the next question. I think the $1 million question in all of this, and this is what fans want to know. Karun, I'll start with you. Does this mean that McLaren have built a car that can compete with Red Bull?
I think they have built a car that can compete with Red Bull when the circumstances all line up. Now, we have a data set of one, which is not very useful, really, in terms of, Miami's, it's a unique circuit. It's a street circuit. The surface is pretty unique. It's, it's not a normal track. We're now coming up to, obviously, Imola, which is a more traditional circuit, very different in terms of the fact that it's, a traditional asphalt on the ground. But actually, you've got lots of high-speed changes of direction. You've got, a bit of elevation change as well. So you've got to have good stability and compliance over the curbs, chicanes as well. So it's a very different type of circuit. But I think they're in it. They're absolutely in it. The update that they brought to Miami, the fact that you would make a decision to bring a big upgrade to a sprint weekend and only have 1 hour to dial the car in shows a huge degree of confidence in the development program going back at the factory, because I don't know of many other teams that would have that confidence, honestly, to make that decision, because we've seen with Mercedes, haven't we? They've been bringing updates, but we keep hearing that what they're seeing on track is not what they're seeing in the wind tunnel. So for McLaren to make that call is brilliant. We believe that Oscar will also have the update, we think, in Imola. So that, he was shy of a couple of tenths, wasn't he? But even without that last little bit of performance, he was still running second in that first stint. He was just running a strong second. Didn't look like Leclerc or Carlos could really attack him.
Abbi, what did you make of McLaren's performance as a whole this weekend? And I guess, those upgrades really seemed to be working, didn't they, for the team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Lando said even, at the start of the weekend that he felt really confident in the car. He just made a few mistakes early on in the weekend and kind of put him further back in the sprint. So it's nice to see that there's, still development going on, and they're really pushing to be right underneath the Red Bull, if not ahead. Like you say, Karun, it'll be exciting to see what they can do in Imola and see how they kind of keep the momentum going.
Now, it's quite annoying, isn't it? Because it seems like at the moment in Formula One, we have these regulation changes. We're obviously due a regulation change in 26. Are we going to see another situation where we don't have competitive teams in terms of, it's just one team dominating, but in the final year of regulations, i.e. next year, maybe McLaren, maybe Mercedes, all of them are going to converge and be the closest they've been for the last 4 years. And then we're going to change the regulations again, and one team might end up dominating.
Yeah, but isn't that the point? I mean, I just think that convergence is inevitable. You weed out the problems that you have early doors, and then everyone's kept on their toes with a regulation change, and the cream rises to the top again. And that is the foundations of a meritocracy.
Yeah, but I'm with you, Matt. I feel like we're just finally getting this point where they're getting closer, because what happens with regulation change is the rich get richer. The teams with more money, more resources. I know we have a budget cap, but actually they've got more resources at the factory, and they've all got loopholes around the budget cap anyway. You actually get this split. And to me, I would have loved to seen the regulation change pushed back 2 years, because we're getting to this point now where the teams are starting to close in a bit more on Red Bull. Next year will be closer. And then with the way the hybrid rules are coming out for 26, somebody's going to get it massively right and somebody's going to get massively wrong.
Yeah, but that somebody may not be Red Bull. And so we might, as we always do with Formula One, see a cyclical pattern emerge again and a different team come out on top. And that's okay.
Don't you want to see, instead of just one on top, you want to see multiple people fighting, don't you?
Yeah,
like
but one or two might get it right, Karun. We don't know that it's just going to be one. So, you might get what you wish for.
We don't have a crystal ball. Abbi, Alpine got their first point, didn't they, this weekend, Abbi? Obviously, take it into the perspective of Alpine. How do Alpine see these regulations? What are the conversations happening at the moment? It seems like there has been a pretty rapid improvement from the start of the season to getting your first points this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's great that the team managed to get their first point. You could see in the garage everyone was kind of elated, and it's definitely a tough start to the season for Alpine. But we, listening in on some of the meetings that they have with all the team back at Enstone, they're very, very focused on development of the car this year. They're confident that we could keep progressing throughout the season once we bring the upgrades. So. We've seen it done in the past with like say McLaren last year. They started in quite a tough position, but by the end of the season they were getting podiums, and they got a race win this weekend. So hopefully Alpine can continue the trajectory and keep developing the car and giving Esteban and Pierre what they're asking for.
And that's the point, isn't it, Matt? Abby's spot on. You can have a change in fortune pretty quickly. I mean, McLaren didn't even get out of Q1 last year. They were languishing at the back and they won the race 12 months later. So I think that keeps us as an audience on our toes, because you don't know what's going to happen. And if you start going, their big upgrade started to come in Austria last year, and we just saw this massive turn and change in fortune, which they were then able to build on. They didn't kind of shimmy forwards and then back. The trajectory was a really positive one that's carried on going. And so I think that could give and should give all the teams hope.
Karun, I just want to come back to Lando and Lando's win. And I wonder if, we just heard from Nat earlier on the podcast about meeting him aged 13. I wonder what your experience has been with Lando. When was the first time you met him, for example? And have you got any good little stories of how he's changed as a driver, how he's changed as a man?
I probably met him when he was doing F3, British F3 at the time. But I think, I'm not going to pretend to be anyone on the inside, but I think what is quite clear is when, as I was saying before, for people like Anthony and Bernie Collins, myself, our role is we sit there watching the races, listening to a lot of this sort of communication, and we're listening to and watch it through practice. And I think that's where you can almost feel the maturity and the change coming. And they're all such different characters. If I contrast with a George Russell, for example, who, when he arrived in his first race at Williams, you listen on the radio and you go, Jesus Christ, this guy's been doing his whole life. He's very clear and sure and confident of, this is what I'm going to do, that's what I'm going to do. You do that to the car, I'll do this. And, complete. And same with Max, completely on top of things. In that respect, really dominating their situation. I think Lando's character wasn't like that. He was a bit more of a timid character. He didn't have this sort of chest out self-confidence of a George or a Max. But that doesn't mean he's any slower. It just means it's a different personality. And I think it actually is quite enduring. I think that's why people have warmed to him, both within the paddock and outside. But I think he's quietly gone about this journey of becoming a number one driver within the team, and he has led that team. When they had Daniel, they signed Daniel up alongside him. Quite honestly, we all thought this is it. Daniel is going to blow. He's going to give Lando a bit of a shake-up, really, because he's how many ever time race winner, and is it night race wins? Yeah, and 8. And that didn't happen. And then we had a situation where you've got, Lando has really pushed the team forward, I think, with the upgrades you guys were talking about before. He's risen to that position of the number one, and it's been fantastic to see. But you have to give credit to the team. They've created an environment that's allowed him to do that. They've allowed him to make the mistakes. They've allowed him to work with the structure of people around him that have worked with him a long time. Will Joseph, as I mentioned before, Jarv, his performance engineer, but even Zach. Most people don't know that Zach sort of semi-managed him from, he's obviously managed by the ADD company, but Zach had a real hand in bringing him on this journey, and they've really molded and created this driver who's delivered the win.
Yeah, and I think, Matt, a crucial word in all of this is loyalty from both sides, a commitment and a trust in each other. And they haven't wavered from that. Either the team, Orlando, they've committed to each other, and other teams have tried to turn his head, and he hasn't been tempted. At least publicly, he hasn't. And honestly, I think he's telling the truth that he's never wavered from that. So I think starting with a team at a very young age and staying with them and growing with them is key to his success now. He's molded that team around him, and also that is the only car he's ever known. So he's managed his driving style accordingly, and perhaps it has been engineered towards him too. But whatever's happened, it's worked, and it's great to see. And it's kind of a lesson, I think, probably for a lot of young drivers coming through, that loyalty actually can really pay off.
Abbi, I was going to ask you, I don't know if you saw, he did a lie detector feature with us this week, and one of the lines that came out of it was Simon asked him, are you going to win a race this year? And he was like, yes, I am. He's like, I'm fed up of not believing that I'm not going to win a race. How important is, and just with reference to your own career, how important is that belief that you're on the right path, that you're doing the right thing, and keeping that positive mental attitude towards the end goal?
1,000%. I mean, a big thing that I've said this year is keeping positive, keeping smiling. I always say a happy Abbi is a fast Abbi. So he's probably kind of going along the same thing, kind of the same mindset, saying, happy Lando is a fast Lando. And you could clearly see at the weekend he was very happy and could feel the potential in the car. And yeah, I think the mind is the driver's strongest kind of tool. Having a strong mindset really, really can benefit your on-track performance, and you've got to believe in yourself before others believe in you. You've got to really, 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 tell yourself, I can do this and I'm capable, and give yourself confidence 1,000%. Otherwise, you can get in your own head, and you end up getting in a bad kind of place in mentally. So it's like I say, it's one of the driver's greatest tools, and I think it could be overlooked sometimes.
How do you train it, Abbi? Do you have people who help you? Like, how does it work in practice?
So I work with a guy called Martin. He's from Gazing Performance Systems, and he's helped me all through my kind of junior career since I've got into single seaters. And it's just about, there's so many different things. I think every athlete is different. And for me, it's about keeping quite weightless, keeping lots of pressure on my shoulders, because I can be my own biggest critic sometimes. So focusing on the controllables, that's a really big thing, because motorsport, although you're in the car on your own, there's a big team behind you, and so many variables that goes on track that you just can't control. So it's all about kind of brushing them away, ignoring them, and keeping focused on what you can influence. And I can keep going on about it forever. There's so many different things.
Whole other podcast.
Yeah, there's just so much that you can go over, and just make sure you're in the right mental space and happy, and very focused, intense on what the job in hand is.
Abbi, how much does experience help you guys as well? I think most people perhaps don't realize, because they see you on the F1 Academy weekends or on Sky, but you're also racing the British F4 Championship, I believe, and a lot of the other drivers in Academy are doing other programs, aren't they? Dorian is in Formula Renault, I think it is, and there's other championships going on. How much and how important is it for all of you to be doing these other categories at such a young age? Because otherwise, from between Jeddah and Miami was quite a big gap, wasn't it? And then again, Miami to Barcelona, you got these big gaps. So surely keeping that momentum going must be really good for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm racing this weekend actually at Brands Indy, so it's gone from Miami to Brands Indy. It's quite a stark difference, but it's about keeping sharp for sure. It's something that I've always said. I just need more seat time, and F1 Academy and Rodin Cars is supporting me this year at Alpine. I'm driving F1 Academy Rodin Cars in British F4, so I can't thank them enough for the opportunities they've given me. I'm chock-a-block this year with how much I'm out in a car because of the dual campaign, and I think it's so important. The two cars, although they look almost identical, they're two really different cars to drive. Surprisingly, especially the UK, it's very cool. Going from kind of 55-degree track temp to 6-degree track temp, it makes it quite hard. But I think that makes me an even better driver, because there's the adaptability. I think one of the biggest strengths, as well as, you know, the mental side of it, is the adaptability. F1 weekends, the grip is always changing for us as F1 are laying rubber. So knowing kind of how to adapt your driving to the different conditions is really important. And yeah, the two campaigns are kind of helping each other and pushing each other on really nicely for me. Like I say, I can't thank Alpine and Rodin Cars enough for what they're doing for me.
Matt, I think Abbi makes a really interesting point about the power of the mind. And actually, Lando's been quite vocal in this space. He's been really supportive of Mind, the charity, and talking about the importance of your own mental health. I remember when he was just coming into the sport, he was getting 2 or 3 accounts on social media who were criticizing him a lot, and he didn't really understand why. I mean, none of us do. It's only human, isn't it, to be sensitive to criticism, particularly if it's not deserved. And it was really niggling him, and it was bothering him. And what I found really interesting this weekend is that when he came out and said it was quite nice to shut the critics up, and those that hadn't believed in him, and those who do, there was one account that he referenced that was always poking at him for having not got a win yet in Formula One. And I think my takeaways from that are that one, you need to sort of leverage negativity and use it to fuel you so that there's a positive outcome from it. But another message to any of the keyboard warriors out there, that it's so futile. I mean, obviously, if it spurred him on to win, it's not entirely futile, but it's just such a, I don't know, such a nasty practice. And it's something that we really need to work on as a society and a sport, is to weed this out. It's so destructive, and everybody's only human. And, you know, here's Lando, a kind of national treasure, who's still affected by people that sort of poke at him online. So it's something that still needs to be sorted out, the bigger picture. But I was really interested and proud to see that he was able to turn that negativity around and use it in a positive way.
He's been refreshingly honest, hasn't he? In that, even admitting that after the race, you know, that's quite a big thing to confront that head on and say such a thing. His press conference went on for about 45 minutes. Yeah. One of my jobs this weekend was listening to that, and it was really interesting. He was really, really open about all those struggles.
I think we just need to educate people that it's a nasty practice, and there's no time or space for it.
Couldn't agree more. One thing I do want to pick up on is some of Christian Horner's comments after the race. Karun, he said that Max picked up quite a lot of floor damage from when he hit the bollard. Is it fair to say that did have a big impact on Max's car and his speed? Is that the only caveat of McLaren's pace seemingly beating the Red Bull? Is there a correlation there?
Well, they're the only ones with the data, aren't they? They haven't exactly, publicized the loss of downforce numbers. I don't know. I mean, the reality is, Max, yes, he was leading. Yes, he was quick, but he wasn't as far ahead as he has been in the past. Lando was within a couple of tenths of him in qualifying. The Ferraris were within that as well. If you look at the sprint quali, Lando and Oscar were quickest in SQ1, SQ2, and then had a terrible run on the softs in SQ3, but they were fast. They were genuinely fast all weekend. So, I'm sure that there's some element of truth in what Christy was saying, but we don't know. That could be a second. That could be, 100th, right? What does it mean? So, as I said, the proof will be in the pudding when we get to the next race. You can't look at one track, one result, and say, this is it for the season. And we've got a variety coming up, right? We've got the Imola, Monaco, Canada, Barcelona. They're 4 completely different circuits. But if McLaren can be competitive at all those 4 circuits, then you can say, okay, this is now a genuine threat for Red Bull, because to be a title contender, you have to be quick everywhere. You can't just be quick at one particular track.
And actually, Max didn't lean into that as an excuse. He was very magnanimous in defeat. And I think, to Karun's point, we had to wait until Singapore for a non-Red Bull winner last year. We've already had 2 this year, albeit with a Max DNF in Australia. But we were able to see the pace of the Ferraris in Australia. And I think Karun's right, it will be track specific, and we've got a whole host of other tracks on the way. So yeah, it makes for a very exciting season.
Let's hope so. Just sort of final few points before we go. I think we sort of discussed this at the beginning, but I've kind of put here, Miami comes of age. You know, this was I thought, a really strong weekend for Miami. Apart from the $180 fruit platter and the $190 chicken wings, which I saw go viral across the weekend, which I think is no fruit platter is worth $180. But Abbi, I mean, we referenced it earlier. You raced in W Series in 2022. Do you feel like finally Miami has sort of become this racetrack now that everyone looks forward to? Like the actual racing itself was massively improved this year.
1,000%. It's, you know, I was there in 2021, and you know there were some teething issues, and that I've not been there since this year. So it's nice to see how much it's progressed. How the organisation even off track is much more. And like you say, the racing on track, they've opened up the chicane a bit more since I'd been there. I think it's the same as last year, but it just provides a bit more minimum speed through there. It's less stop and go. You don't get balked by the car ahead, and you can attack better into the last corner. So it's, you know, they're doing all the right things, and it's just nice to see how positive a reception it's had this year. You know, it's been really, really, you know, it's not just been seen as a show. It's been recognised as a proper racetrack, and it's providing entertaining races for us.
I tell you what, though, we need to send Martin with the set of stilts for the grid walk, because he just couldn't see anybody, could he? Like, it just looked like there was this sea of people, and he just wandering around most of them saying, "Where am I? Where is everybody?"
Couldn't find a celeb for love nor money, could he? At points,
it's just this army of people.
Yeah, it is one of the grid walks we look forward to every year. I thought it was, it's funny.
As Abbi says, though, the key was the reception given by Miami. From the minute we landed, they wanted us to be there, and they fully embraced us. And I chatted to Susie Wolff on the Wednesday, and she said she was blown away by the enthusiasm that they had for F1 Academy. They were so up for it. It wasn't just an also ran, a tag on, if you like, to the main event. They really bought into it. And Susie was saying it really felt like F1 Academy had arrived, and this was the momentum they needed and the springboard to the remaining 5 rounds of the season. So I'm, again, so proud of you, Abbi, and so excited about F1 Academy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just mirroring everything you said, really. Like you say, it had its own little moment, and it was so special to be one of the 16 drivers a part of it.
Now, the only thing is, Matt, I did have a problem with getting anywhere in Miami. You are better off running from A to B. And when I left the racetrack on one of the days, I was trying to get an Uber across to South Beach, and one of the guys offered me a tuk-tuk, and he said, "It's $20 per minute on this tuk-tuk." Yeah, what? I swear to God, $20 per minute. I said, "Well, how fast do you go? Because if you're quick, I'll take it." And he went, "Well, you know, it depends on the legs." And I was like, "Mate, I'm not taking that gamble. I can't be $100 down before I've even got to the Uber." But I did quite appreciate his entrepreneurship and the fact he was willing to give it a go. Catching him at the beginning of the day might have been better when his legs were a bit fresher. Yeah,
better value for money. Karun, is it a big thumbs up for Miami?
I wasn't there, but from everything I saw on telly, yeah, I think so. It looked great, and I think, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because people go, "Oh, we got 3 races in America. Why have we got 3 races in America? We don't need that, blah, blah, blah." You forget how big a country it is.
Yeah.
And the fact that Austin, Vegas, and Miami are, first of all, if you travel there non-F1 weekends, on holiday or whatever, you realize they are 3 completely different cities and 3 completely different demographics that attract different audiences from the continent, not just the country. You start to realize that the appetite is there, isn't it, for F1? You know, all 3 races I think have been sellouts, and it's good for business.
See, I was reading an article on that actually. Seemingly, Miami is very, very good for business in terms of F1 sponsorship deals being brokered.
Because Proppy's eating all those chicken wings at $180 a pop.
$190 a pop, yeah. Look, final point goes to you, Abbi. How are you looking the rest of the year? Obviously, you've got you're racing this weekend, and then you've got Spain shortly after for F1 Academy. It's a busy old year you've got ahead, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's 7 weeks now until Barcelona. So I've got actually a handful of British F4 races in between. I think it helps being kind of distracted. Going into Miami, I was the championship leader. And it just gave me I didn't have to think about it too much. I wasn't overthinking it. And again, being so busy in between, I won't be overthinking it again. I'll just keep in the same mindset, do what I can on track. And yeah, it's only positive having so much seat time. I think Barcelona as a team, we struggled with in pre-season testing, but we've made a few changes. I think my engineer was, we know what we did wrong in that test, so we're pretty looking forward to Barcelona, and I just can't wait to see what the season brings. But keeping grounded, keeping that mental kind of strength, not keeping my expectations too high, but of course you've got to kind of celebrate and be happy over the weekend we've had.
Well, I tell you what, Abbi, that is a really good point and Daniel made it. He said, you've got to celebrate when you have the opportunity, because just look at the change in fortunes from his P4 and then falling right down towards quali. And I think that's the same for Lando. Make the most. I'm not saying that you can't emulate that and do it again and again. And you've obviously got a 34-point buffer in the championship now, but just enjoy these moments. I remember Seb saying it, Karun, when he said to the team after winning the championship in Brazil when was it? I think it was his third championship. And he said, guys, these times don't happen over and over again. So make the most of now. And so, yeah, enjoy this, Abbi. And, but yeah, keep winning.
I'll try my best.
Easy. Easy. Look, just time to tell everyone about what's coming up. So no race this weekend, but we head to Europe and to Imola the weekend after, so you can catch all the action from the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix from Friday the 17th of May across Sky Sports F1. All that's left to do is wish you good luck for the season ahead, Abbi. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Thank you, Nat. Thank you, Karun. We're going to be back next Tuesday. Hope you can join us then. Bye for now.